Nicole and welcome back to another Designed with video. Today we are going to make these super easy stenciled card backgrounds using the May SCT sampler. This is a really fun kit that we have that comes out every month. I like to think of it as a kit, but it's really just a sampling of goodies that are out on the market right now. This month was May, and we have a really fun collection here from Vicki Boutin, as well as our friends at Lawn Fawn. They have a custom die in this kit. There's some really great papers, some die cuts, a sheet of stickers, and some embellishments. I have loved the stencil that came in this month's kit. So every single month is a different collection. It's the same stuff, but divided up between everybody. So what stencil I have, you may have a different one, but they all come from the May kit. So what I'm going to use here is this stencil. I was really inspired by the circular design by Vicki Boutin. I have the stencil, some of her foundations paper, one of her art wedges, and some gel medium. Now I'm just going to hold this down because my card front is smaller than the stencil itself, but if you're worried that it's going to slip, I would recommend you use a little bit of washi or purple tape. And I'm just adding a thin layer over across the whole card front here with that stencil in place. So I'm just adding a little bit at a time. The art wedge makes it really easy to get it on in a nice amount. Thought about squirting it directly on my project and thought that's probably not a good idea, so I stuck with sticking that onto the transparency sheet that I have just to add that thin layer. Now once you have that thin layer in place, it's as simple as lifting off your stencil really quickly and setting it aside to dry. It probably takes about 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't take a long time. If you're in a rush, you could also use your heat gun. But if you have the product out, I suggest you make a couple cards at a time. But in between your stenciling, I do recommend that you clean your stencil. So sometimes when you're stenciling, you can get some of that gel medium or the other goopy stuff underneath your stencil. And so you don't want that to make an impression on the front of your next project. And it will also slowly whittle away at your design if you don't clean that up in between. So I'm just going to quickly clean that up and now put my stencil back in place. This time I'm going to be a little less neat with the stencil. I'm just going to add this gel medium onto the stencil, being really careful that I don't follow a harsh line there on the right side. And I'm just going to lift that up, and you can see I'm just using my finger there to wipe off any straight lines from the edge of the stencil. And I'm going to open up my bottle again and just use the art wedge to clean that up really quickly. Look how easy that was to clean up the excess. You don't really want to waste any of this product. Now I've set both of these aside to dry for a good period of time. You can see it's a little bit shiny. That's because it's all dried. I have here clear acrylic sheet and some distress oxides. I have spiced marmalade is the yellow, scattered straw is the yellow, sorry. Spiced marmalade is the orange, and picked raspberry is the pink. And I'm going to just put a little bit of that each onto this transparency sheet with some clean water just to make my paint colors. So I'm going to go ahead and I've just added some of that pink onto that top left corner of the front there. This is the card that has the half stenciled background. And so I'm just going to add water to that ink, and I'm going to make that my own little watercolor paint. And I'm just adding that onto the top, along the top edge of the card. So I'm going to go pink, orange, and then the yellow. And I'm going to let that move. You can see the paint is really moving a lot because of the amount of water. I have a paper towel here, and I'm just going to use my paintbrush just to kind of gently ease it all the way down, dabbing it off. You could leave the drips if you like them, but I wanted to kind of make a watercolory blurred kind of background. So I'm just going to use some more water with my paintbrush and just gently guide that ink all the way down to the bottom edge of the cardstock. So I'm going to add a little bit more paint in the areas I want to have more of a deeper color. And then again, just taking water and guiding that all the way down. So that's pretty good. I want to add a little bit more pink. I think I just want a little bit of depth of color. If you want, you can dry this and then go back in a second time with a little bit more of the same colors of ink. And that will just deepen some of the tones instead of having that washed look. But for this one, I want to have just a washed look, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. And just add a little bit more water just to get it all the way to the edge of the card. All right, so that one's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and do a crafter's mistake right here and clean everything up. This is a lot of product that I'm wasting, and to be honest, I could have made both my card fronts with that same stuff. So don't do what I did. That's not smart. You should really use all that stuff. It's expensive, right? We know we craft. Some things are expensive, and they're totally worth it, but we should really be smarter about it. So you can see I've already added more pink again, and I'm going to clean it up a second time because I am not even thinking about what my next plan is. So I'm going to let this dry. You can let it dry on its own, or I'm going to use a heat gun just to heat set it. And I kind of like using the heat gun, to be honest, because it helps me kind of move some of that water around on the foundations paper. But if you just want to let it sit aside and dry, you can completely do that and move on to your next one. And I'm the firm believer, and if you have all these products out and you're doing kind of the hard work, you should keep it out and do a bunch. So you can see there, I just rubbed off some of that ink that was on top of the stenciled background. The gel medium will resist that background. So anything you have kind of on the top, if you rub it off, you're going to get that kind of like almost embossed type of look without the messy embossing powder. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, and I'm going to do the exact same thing now on my other background. And this time I'm going to work with the exact same 3 colors. Again, this is why you don't clean up in between, because how wasteful was I earlier. Adding a dab of water to each of the colors. This time I'm going to start with the lightest color, the yellow, and then actually I'm lying. I'm going to start with the pink again. Start with the dark pink and just do kind of like 3 different areas of color. So I'll start with the pink and do a bit of a triangle of pink. And I'm really not being particular at all. I'm really just kind of making blobs of color, for lack of a better term. And then I'm going to go move to the orange, and then I'm going to finish off with the yellow. Normally you would start with the lighter color and then work your way to the darker, but I really want this card to be really that orange and pink color. The yellow will just kind of blend a little bit the colors together, so I'm not so concerned with that. And I'm just making sure that when I'm mixing the colors, I'm not having too much of one color in one area, and I'm using the yellow as that neutral to kind of balance it all out. So I'm going to add more of the pink and not so much water at this point because there is quite a bit of water. You can see there on the right side even that it's pooling a little bit. So to always have a paper towel handy. There I go, wasting product again. Anyway, have a paper towel handy to clean up or dab off any excess color you may have as you kind of go through this technique. All right, so I am going to clean up now. I think I am done with the ink, and I am going to dry this one off. I will grab my heat tool for this again just to speed it up, and I am going to dab it off. So again, like I said, on that right hand side, there's a bit of a pooling of color. I am going to just dab some of those areas off. Because there's a lot of water still on the card front, I'm not worried about filling in that area. It's going to fill in nicely anyway. So once I have this all heat set, I'm going to rub off again some of the front of that card. So you can see how it's a lot darker right now. In about 2 minutes or so, even a minute from now, once I have this card completely dry, I'm going to rub it off with my paper towel, and it's very subtle, but you can really see that white resist from the stenciled background. I get that really, really soft watercolor feeling. So I really love that. So easy, right? Vicky is right. It is really art for everyone. So now I have some super pretty card fronts. I just want to add a little bit of embellishment. So I'm going to use the sampler again just to add some of the details to my card fronts. I love this paper from Color Kaleidoscope, so I'm going to cut out these butterflies. I'm just going to fussy cut 3 or so, not a lot, just a few, just to add a little bit of dimension to the front of the card. And I'm also going to end up adding in a stamped title to both my cards. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that stamp right now. It's actually from Jelly Bean Soup. It's from the Rainbow Roo collection. And I'm going to use the word choose happy. And I'm going to use that. It's just some black close to my heart archival ink. And just stamp that onto the flat area where the stencil isn't. So you kind of, it's where the stencil is, it is pretty, there is a bump to it. So you wouldn't be able to stamp directly on that. But on the area where it was watercolored, that will fit nice. So now for the second card, I'm going to go ahead and play around with some of these die cuts. I kind of thought about using this ring circle. This rainbow is really cool. And then I thought about using this tag. As you can see, I'm putting a bunch of foam adhesive on it, but I don't end up using it at all. And that's because I thought the tag was just taking up too much of the front of the card. I really want the stencils on these cards to really show. So I'm going to take that off, and I decide to go with a little bit of pattern paper. I'm trying to pick here some ones I think I might use. I know for sure I'm going to cut out some of those flowers because they're just too pretty not to. But I am going to rip off a little strip of green paint or paper. And the green really matches well with orange. It's like a natural color match. So I'm going to add that here and then just tuck that die cut underneath the edge. I think that's going to start filling out my card really nicely. I will stamp that Choose Happy again on some smooth white cardstock here, again with that same black ink from Close to My Heart. And then I am going to trim that down into just to a little bit of a pennant shape. And I'm going to tuck that into my die cuts there. So I'm going to notch the end with my scissors and then tuck that into my die cuts just to layer everything together really easily. Foam adhesive behind the back just to make it pop. And the foam adhesive is a really good way to actually add dimension, obviously, but it's good because you can tuck things now behind that pennant. So instead of it being flat on the front and then deciding kind of after the fact that you want to add something, this way now I have a vehicle to where I can put those die cuts now. So I'm going to go ahead, I have these fussy cut and I'm just fiddling with where I want to put them. And then I've decided I'm going to layer some over this top left corner with the die cut. And now I'm going to tuck those fussy cut flowers underneath some of that pennant there. I love this pink on this paper is beautiful. So I'm just going to add a little bit of foam adhesive and get these popped up. And there you go. Not much else I really want to do to this card other than add a little machine stitching down that green strip just to kind of give it a little bit of texture. But a really, really fun way to create some cards with a super fun sampler every month. So here's my first card, the second card we just made with that watercolor washed background with the whole stencil front. It was really pretty, really simple. You could do this on a layout, it would look amazing. And here's the first card with those popped up butterflies and the kind of half and half washed background. I really love how this looks. I hope you're going to give this a try because if I can do it, so can you. And again, this is not just for cards. You can do this on layouts for sure, and it will look amazing. So thanks for joining me on this Design with Nicole. I will see you again next month. Bye-bye.